quickly to do with the national budget and as well as the investment opportunities and trade opportunities here. I'm still with Brenda Akankunda from Siatini, Uganda. So we were discussing something about trade. No, let's start with the investment opportunities for quick economic recovery. It may be a gradual process, I do believe, but there are chances that we will recover. But when you look at the investment opportunities for the local Ugandan, which ones can you look at and say, if we can stick to this, we are good to go?
Thank you for that question. First of all, investment and the investment landscape in Uganda is one of the key areas that we need to change or rethink how we are looking at investment. And why we say that is, one, when you look at, for instance, what is our interest when it comes to investment? And this goes to the investment agreements that we sign, but also the investment legal frameworks that we have in a country, maybe with examples like the investment code. You realize that most of these investment policies are structured in a way that is just skewed towards protecting the investor and leaving out the citizens and the host states. But if we talk about the economy and economic recovery, we should be looking at investment that works for the people, that works for the state, and also benefits the investor. Not just an investment because how much is the investor getting in terms of profits. That is why at Siatini we run a campaign that is dubbed Life Before Profit. To think that before you think about the profits that come with investment, let's prioritize the rights of the citizens. And I will relate this with the economic recovery. For instance, one of the key issues that we advocate for is fair working conditions in investment schemes. If we have maybe a huge investment plantation in place, how much are the workers getting? How are the working conditions? Because if these workers, for instance, are getting their fair share or they're getting, they're well paid, it means that it is even helping an economy in a sense that we have a population that is first of all employed, but also that is able to, earn an income that is sustainable. So that is why we think that as we stand, our investment landscape is really just skewed towards that protection, and it undermines or underlooks the rights of the citizens. But also, secondly, and this is also something that has really come out, for instance, in this, coffee agreement that we saw recently, is that even when we talk about investment, and we want to look at investment that is for sustainable development, we need to look at investment where, say, we have foreign investments, and that is inevitable because of maybe the capacities. We work so much to ensure that we attract foreign investors. That is why you see, as a country, they're giving out a lot of incentives in forms of tax, land, and all that. But when they come in place, can we also look at how best we can be able to tap what they have? For instance, can we look at how best we can put in place joint ventures? If we're giving out all this much to an Italian investor, how are we benefiting as a country? Can we say, for instance, maybe we have our own coffee, investment, or we have an investor who is maybe does not have the same capacity as this Italian investor that is coming in place. So can we promote joint ventures? And that will basically help to boost the economy, because it means that we have one challenge is when we just let in foreign investors, they come invest, and at the end of usually the tax holiday which they've been awarded, they repatriate the profits and take them back home. But if we withought that, and we are focusing more on the local investors, that even when this foreign investor comes in place, we are doing a joint venture. It means this local investor will definitely have to keep the resources here because this is their home. So in the long run, it helps the economy even to, recover way much better. But I think you also intended to ask a question on the investment opportunities.
For recovery next financial year.
we cannot run away from the fact that agriculture is the backbone of the country. So in whatever we do, agriculture needs to be at the top. And when we talk about agriculture, we've seen some particular components of agriculture. For instance, we've seen coffee. We see a lot of discussions today around coffee. And this is because we've seen how much revenue can be collected from coffee itself, or how much money the country can earn just from coffee, especially when you look at how much we are exporting as a country. So I think that is agriculture is one of the key investment opportunities that we have, but it relates back to the issues that I raised. If it is done well, if it is inclusive in a sense that we are looking at how best we can solve the two challenges majorly.
I would want to chip in a little bit. Would the done well if we are following the rightful, we're using the rightful methods, equipment, or if government intervenes?
Government definitely has to intervene because if we talk about policies, it is government that puts in place the policies. But it's not about us doing it right. It is majorly because it comes from the top. The policies we have in place. If say we had maybe a minimum wage in place that says employees must be paid this amount, that is from the top. Meaning that even you as an employer, you are obliged to, comply to that. And when you don't, then that is when we would be able to go back to government and say, could you please implement this? But I think all this can be solved if we have better policies in place. And I was giving you an example to do with agriculture. If we see every other time setting up investment schemes, and especially in agriculture, we have huge sugarcane plantations, coffee plantations. If we look, for instance, I don't want to mention names, but we have one of the hugest coffee plantation in Africa that is here in Uganda. If, for instance, we were to add value to our coffee and say we also work on the issue of consumption. For instance, for each district, we have a coffee shop that is even put up by government. That would mean that, first of all, chances are high that consumption will be high, which in the long run will bring in revenue. But also, it means you're employing a lot of people around the country, which will also solve the challenge of unemployment that we have in a country. So I think it is important that we tap in what we already have, and especially to do with agriculture. But also, we cannot have an economy that is recovering if we are still hit by such pandemics. So it means that the health sector is also one of those key sectors that we need to, look at how best we invest in it. And lastly, we need to invest highly in education, because if we work on those three, work on health, education, and agriculture, for me, I am sure that we can be able to get a lot of returns in terms of revenue from these three sectors, because they are key and very fundamental to our nation.
Okay, then lastly, before we actually close up our discussion, trade, Uganda's trade currently, if you're to give us an overview of maybe just how is the trade currently? How is our level of trade? Do we have the capacity of saying, well, our traders can actually stay afloat in the next financial year?
Well, talking about trade, we realize that we have oftentimes, we keep broadening our trade and opening up the economy in terms of liberalization. Right now we see the African Continental Free Trade area where we say we have opened up the economy. And now what's that, and also even within the regional integration, we see the EAC expanding every other time. What comes in as a challenge, or what affects us, is, because if we talk about trade, we need to basically look at what are we doing as a nation in terms of trading. For instance, if say it is to do with pharmaceutical products, how much are we producing as a nation? And how much can we be able to trade in terms of maybe exporting? But you look at the fact that we've liberalized, it usually comes back to pinch on us, and that is why we've always advocated for maybe seeing a part where we ring fence certain sectors of the economy. Sectors where we know that as a country we can ably produce, maybe if it is agriculture, so that we ring fence it, and if it means putting also high tariffs for maybe someone who is importing, because that way we can be able to solve the challenge of, we say we are moving towards industrialization, and we cannot talk about industrialization if we are not producing as a country. And we cannot ably produce if we still let goods come in, and they are coming in, meaning probably from developed countries, meaning their cost is likely to be low. We understand that would be important for the consumer welfare, because you can easily access at a cheaper price. But then that will keep on impinging on the local producers, because it means they cannot be able to get markets. So that is one of the key challenges that affect our trade as a nation. But also the issue that our markets, it is quite difficult for us to access our markets. And this is where we should be seeing, for instance, Ministry of Trade being prioritized even when it comes to the budget. Because when we talk about trade negotiations, we should see Ministry of Trade being able to negotiate for markets for us. But even, let me just give you one last one. We have the World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference coming up. We have different negotiations that are ongoing, negotiations in the AFCFTA. But still, when you look at the budget, you realize there is no money allocated particularly for negotiations. And what actually usually happens is that even for those negotiations, you realize they're funded by development partners. Meaning to us, we don't look at it as a priority, yet we cannot talk about markets if we are not funding negotiation for those markets, and how best we can be able to access them, and also be able to, put out our goods and sell them at a price that is quite sustainable, and also that brings in a return for us as a country.
All right. And lastly, in 30 seconds, maybe your last few remarks before we close up.
It's been quite a broad discussion, but I think for us to be able to recover from this economic crisis, we need to first of all put our trade, investment and fiscal policies right, so that they work towards, they are pro-people, or they work towards achieving sustainable development for the people, for the host states, and for everyone, so that it is a win-win situation.
All right. Thank you very much for making our morning more educative and informative. And that is Brenda Kankunda from the Trade Investment Policy at Siatini, Uganda. I've got the names right there. And of course, thank you very much for joining us on that particular topic of discussion. It's still broad, and we shall be breaking it down for you until the 14th day of June 2022. Coming up shortly, I'm returning with Sports Business. Stick around.